Hi guys, Keith Arkenberg Farms. It is now the first week of October, and as you can see with the box here, my onion sets have arrived, so it's time to start getting everything prepped out, ready, and get these bad boys in the ground. So, let me show you. My box of Forum onion sets has arrived. Ordered this earlier from Johnny Select Seeds to make sure that I got them in time. They deliver them by zone. Ordered 1,000 of them. So hopefully this will be enough to get this whole plan out. I'm gonna go show you how we made this fabric and walk you through the process of planting and kind of discuss some of the culture of how we keep them growing. But first, head over to arkenbergfarms.com. Scroll down to the bottom, digital tools and training, bunch of cool stuff down there. Also got a greenhouse side openers and door actuators there as well. Go ahead and go check it out. We also do consulting. Winter months a great time to reflect and go back and try to figure out what worked best, what didn't work, and how to make your season better. First part of planting these is actually determining my layout and making a template so I can start burning my holes in the landscape fabric. For this, just need a scrap piece of some kind of OSB, plywood, whatever you have laying around. I happen to have this guy right here. Follow the directions. For planting these onion sets, they're supposed to have 4 inches in row, so this way, and then 12 inches in between row, and this way. There we go. So instead of doing that, I'm using my standard layout, which is 4 inches in row, which that's not standard, but the 10 inches in between row works best on a 30-inch bed instead of having 12 inches like they wanted. But what you end up with, if you stagger your holes so they're not directly in line with each other and you go diagonally, you get that 12 inches in between, basically planting that way. So that's what we're really shooting for. The idea here is you mark out your board, turn you around. You can see where all the X's are. That's where all my holes are. Then we'll go through, and because I want a smaller hole for less weed pressure, I actually am using a 1.5 inch hole saw to drill 1.5 inch holes. One very important part to notice is that your first hole and then your last hole have to be the same on both ends of the board. That way, when you start burning, which I'll show you here in a second, you pull this down, burn all your holes, and then your last hole here, you'll move the template down and line it up here. Another important thing to do is put a center line on it. Put a center line on both ends because the landscape fabric has that other colored thread in it, so you can line up the board as you move down your fabric. We'll get to drilling this out and get this ready to go head over to the field and start burning our fabric. You just got a cordless drill, 1.5 inch hole saw bit for the drill, and then we go at it. I find it best as I'm drilling to kind of rock it around in circles. That way it kind of cuts a bigger hole and it makes it easier to get the plugs out when you're done. See, the plug gets stuck in the end there. That's when these little notches in the side go through and pop them. You have to work back and forth a lot of times. You get your nice little plug out. You've got a nice little hole here. I'll continue down and then we'll go out and start burning fabric. Now comes the easy part, actually burning the holes themselves. I like this long handle burner. That way I can stand up and burn without bending over. I line up my center mark and center mark with this line running down the middle of the landscape fabric. Step out on my board and start burning. Now that we got the first set melted, burned through, release the fabric from our template, and pull it down, line up this very first hole right here with our last hole we burned. Line up the center arrows on both sides, and then we repeat. It's very important to keep pressure on this, so standing on it's a good idea so you don't burn your holes too big. Now I will tell you, typically I don't burn these on the beds I'm actually producing in, but I had a brand new piece of fabric down to knock the weed pressure down this bed. I don't want to pull it up because we're getting to that time of season where it's just more work. Honestly, typically I burn these out in the grass area. Gotta be very careful if you have dry grass underneath it. It will light on fire. Oh, and the footwear I'm wearing, not the best of the world, but I've done this a couple times and I know better than burning my foot. So I'm gonna continue down, burn this thing out, and we'll start planting. This is what the onion sets look like when they show up. They come in a mesh bag in a box. You want to make sure to get them out of the sun as soon as possible, store them in a cool, dark spot. I temporarily threw mine in my warmer walk-in just to kind of keep them from being out in the super hot temperature. We are expecting really cool temperatures in the next day or two. That's why I'm planning them out now. For anybody who doesn't know, onion sets, basically little onions that have been harvested prematurely and then dried down. These are perfect for planting out. They work really great. A lot easier than doing it from seed and relatively cheap. I think this whole bag here is Forum onion sets. I got them from Johnny Select Seeds. It's 50 bucks for 1,000 of them. So really can't complain on the price, especially when we can get about $2 per onion come springtime. So it'll work out great. Now we're gonna go ahead and start planting. Now for planting, they want this roughly 1 inch deep. So what I have for that, my nifty dibbler stick here. Might do a video on this one of these days. It's what we use to plant all of our transplants, specifically sized for the flats we use. Just so happens this is about 2 inches deep. We're going to go through, poke a hole, drop a set in the hole. One thing to be aware of, onion sets have a top and bottom. So we have root end, which goes down, and then we have stem end that goes up. Always plant your root end down or you will not end up with an onion. So the procedure is pretty easy. We're just going to poke a hole down about the depth of our stick, drop an onion in. And just do that and repeat all the way across the whole area. I do have them in a little cup with a handle here because I find that's a lot easier to actually move around with than trying to tote that huge bag everywhere I go. So we're not getting super scientific on this. We're just poking holes and poking them in the holes. And I did prep all this ground ahead of time about 2 or 3 weeks ago. That's why I put the landscape fabric down. That's why I actually had to burn into the fabric, which I don't typically like to do with burning fabric on the field. But at this point, we're getting late in the season and I need to get these babies in the ground and I didn't want to have to pull it up and put it back down. We're just going to continue on and just work this whole entire bed out. Did do a typical application of fertilizer. It's just a 100 pound per acre equivalent of the nitrogen using our Nature Safe 855. I find that gives me the best results. And then we'll get these babies in the ground. We'll kind of talk about the culture of how you take care of them through the winter and to harvest them in the spring. Now, when you're planting these, you want to be as efficient as possible with the least amount of movements. So always grab a couple bulbs in your hand at once. Poke and set. So as I'm poking, I'm resetting the bulb in my other hand, making a hole and continuing on. I also try to complete a line back about as far as I can reach before I start the next one. Also be careful if you got any damaged ones like this one here or anything that looks like it's got disease on it, do not plant it. It's not going to do you any good. But the idea is the least amount of movement possible. When you're planting, don't overload your hand because it becomes more difficult to actually place them. As you can see, I'm not backfilling any of these holes either. I'm doing that because the overhead irrigation in this tunnel will actually do it for me. Turn back as far as I can go. Take a step back, Bring my container back, and then we'll just repeat. And at a rate like this, you can finish up pretty fast. You might be wondering, how am I going to harvest this? I only burned a 1.5-inch hole. In the past, we've done this same situation with about a 2-inch, 2.5-inch hole, 3 plants or onion sets per hole, and we just take them out as they size up. 1.5-inch hole, that ain't gonna work. So I give you 2 methods. One, you either come in under the side, take them out so you can get them fresh, or what I'm gonna do is I'm actually gonna strip the whole entire fabric up and off of the tops themselves, so the bulbs will actually still be in the ground. Then I can go through and harvest them. We're aiming for not necessarily a storage, but we want to have a cured bulb for sale. We will pull some early for fresh sales, but we'll just peel back a little bit at a time. It's pretty simple. There's really not much to it. You get your bulb, you plant it, and you work all the way down the end. This whole thing right here took me less than an hour. We're at about an 80-some-ish foot bed, 4 inches on center, so that's 3 per foot, 80 foot, 240. So we got about 750 bulbs here. Looks like I have a little bit more than 250 left, and they're going to go over here in this bed. This bed over here is for this one on the end, the spare. That's for my garlic. I usually plant about 50 foot, and I do that on 5 rows on the bed, 6 inches in between, in landscape fabric. I've done a video on that as well. That's over in the other greenhouse. I still have to pull the fabric and put it down. What I'm going to do is I'm going to plant these as an experiment in that same fabric, because I already have it, and why not? And I usually don't plant that much garlic anyways. So I've got another 80 foot. We'll do 40 and 40 and see how it works. So as always, hope you all liked what you saw today. If you did, don't forget to like and subscribe. And if you have any better ideas on this, go ahead and put it in the comment section down below. I love hearing the comments, love reading them, and love learning more from other people out there. So thank y'all. Have a good day.